Hello again, and here we are at Perfectly Paranormal, episode 104. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today you're going to hear part 1 of the bodily signs and symptoms of paranormal presence. People have asked me to put all of the possible signs and symptoms of sensing entities into one episode, really just for easy reference. But I'd have to say that would be a rather long episode, so I've broken the information into 2 sections. So today we're going to dive into part 1 of unpacking visual, auditory, verbal and psychic signs, along with mental and emotional signs and symptoms, and sudden paranoia and worrying about death. Now, where to start? There is a lot of information to cover in this episode. So I've taken the signs and symptoms from chapter 2 of my book called The Darkness Around Us, and I've added a few new ones. I've had lots of experiences myself, and also friends and clients that have told me about symptoms that they've experienced that could not peep down to a medical or a mental health cause. So it's got to be energetic. It can't be anything else. So I'm also going to share some short encounters along the way to highlight how some of these signs and symptoms can present themselves. Now, before we get into the signs and symptoms, I always like to make a disclaimer. Please consult your doctor or your mental health professional before assuming that you have an energetic cause to your problem. Energetic attachment symptoms can mimic mild or severe medical, emotional or mental health conditions. But if your doctors give you the all clear, then you can then look for other reasons, such as a possible energetic cause. Now, what are some of the common signs and symptoms indicating energetic attachment to people? Now, as I talk about all the time, dark and demonic entities can attach to people when the people create intense negative emotions. They have weakened auric fields, they've got extreme addictions, they've got troubled mental states, or they've been experiencing debilitating trauma. Now, that can be now or in the past. Or when people dabble for fun with Ouija boards to see who's out there on the other side. Or they're experimenting with the occult or black magic. Most people will experience negative energetic attachments at some time in their lives. It's just part of being human. But being aware of the signs and symptoms of this energetic attachment is most helpful, because you will notice the detrimental characteristics and changes in yourself. You might see them in a family member. Sometimes you can even pick up energetic changes in your home. Then you can do something about it before it becomes a significant problem in your life. Now, the signs and symptoms. We're going to start with sensory signs and symptoms. We're going to look at visual, then auditory, verbal, and then psychic symptoms. Now, visual signs. A lot of people tell me that they see flashes or streaks of light. Now, it can be dark light, if that makes sense, or it can be white light. Or in their minds, they can see faces. I get a lot of clients that will contact me and go, I think there's something in my house. Or there might even be something attached to me. When I'm going to bed of a night time, when I'm lying down and my eyes are closed, I'm seeing these flashes of faces, or these really ugly, scary, grotesque faces. Or I've even seen streaks of light inside my eyelids. In the early days of developing my psychic awareness, I was very, very open and very unprotected. And when I would be settling into bed with the lights out, I would sometimes see these very strange little thin streaks of white light moving quickly across the insides of my eyelids. Now, most often you would associate white light with angels, archangels, spirit guides, spirits in the environment, but this was inside my eyelids. This was a form of energetic intruder. Now, in those days, me seeing this told me that I had an energetic presence within my physical body and that I needed to check myself more carefully after doing my energy work. Because quite often when people do energy work, whether it's doing Reiki or you're doing, say, house clearing or personal energy clearing work, sometimes the energy beings will transfer to the person doing the clearing, depending on the type of protection that you've set up around yourself. So I knew, as soon as I saw these streaks sort of flickering across the inside of my eyelids, I'm like, aha, I see you. And quite often, what came with these flashes of light inside my eyelids, when I actually got to sleep, my dreams would also reflect the dark energy presence. And I would have really disturbed sleep. I would be rolling around in bed. I couldn't relax. I would be seeing horrific visions in my mind. I would be seeing flashes of traumatic happenings and really fear-triggering situations, because in those days I was a lot softer than I am now. I've kind of hardened up over the years. And when what I call the fear feeders, which is a particular type of dark entity, can get into your space and try and trigger you to create fear and paranoia and anxiety and overwhelm, because they're kind of their favourite food to feed off, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. You do not affect me anymore. So they would simply move on. So auditory signs. Now this is a big one. Quite often, a lot of people have reported to me hearing unexplainable loud or whispering voices inside or outside of their head. The words may be said in a very repetitive or harsh tone, and they usually increase in their intensity because they're trying to get your attention. They want you to do something. They want you to take notice. Now, these voices may call you harmful or hateful names, or they can comment negatively on your appearance, on your skill level, or on your self-confidence. Now, these comments, they really do create emotional responses which feed the dark energy beings doing this. So you've got to be aware of your mental state. Do you have trauma that you haven't dealt with? Is there something in your life that you need to talk to somebody about? This is where this one specifically crosses over into mental health conditions or grief or trauma. There's something there that needs to be looked at. If you go to your doctor and you get an all clear, or you just know you haven't got any trauma in your life, you're like, nah, I've got a really great life. I don't know where this is coming from. It's not coming from you. It's being implanted and they're trying to get your attention. Quite often, what they're trying to do is to find the best way to get your attention so you create what they want. So they'll go from the visual to the auditory, to the verbal, to the psychic. They'll try most people with all of those different access points. And if you don't give them what they want, they will just simply move on. Now, verbal signs. This is rather interesting. A verbal sign of dark energy presence in your energy field or in your body is when you're talking to someone rationally and then all of a sudden you flip into an acute emotional state where you're at either end of the scale, like you can be in a rage and you're angry and you're throwing things and you don't know what's going on, or you can be emotional and crying uncontrollably, curled up in a ball in the corner. And you're like, what is going on? I don't know why I am behaving this way. Again, if it's not you and you've seen your doctor or you've got no mental health conditions, nothing that's triggering you at the moment, this can be an outside influence. Now, I saw a friend once. This was interesting. I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of people one day and I witnessed a male friend of mine totally flip into a negative emotional state that I'd never, ever seen him in before. And I just knew there was something not right about it. Like he was really going down the rabbit hole. So I jumped into the conversation and sort of broke the spell, if you want to call it that he seemed to be under. So what I did was I literally butted into the conversation, and I know that's a bad thing to do. It's one of my bad habits, but in this case, it worked well because what it did, it snapped him out of the state he was in, and he just kind of looked at me blankly. It's like this person went into some sort of weird trance where he was almost taken over by someone that was trying to communicate in a rather nasty way. And this person sat there just looking at me, and all these other people are looking at me, and I just apologised for butting in. But I said I could see that there was something else going on in that situation. And this person's behaviours and their emotions just returned to normal. It was like they came out of a trance. Now, energy beings, this is something that I experienced. Oh my gosh, I've had so many experiences with these beings. Energy beings can sometimes slip words into conversations without the person being fully aware of what they're saying until they actually hear themselves saying it. Now, this experience happened to me when I visited a very prominent location with some resident spirits. I was working as a tour guide at this location, and we would have like a 2-hour tour, and in the middle of the tour we take a break, people could have something to drink, go to the toilet, all that sort of thing. And I was talking to some of the tour guests, and we were just having a conversation, and one of them asked a specific question about how the people were treated at this site. Before I even could think about how I was going to respond to such a delicate question, oh my goodness, the information that poured out of my mouth was totally inappropriate. I said things that apparently were very accurate to the site, but were totally inappropriate to be sharing with people. It was information that at that time I had no knowledge of. What the spirits were doing, because they know that I'm very connected to them, very psychic, loved the place, really did love the spirits and felt very connected to them. It's not that they stepped into my body, because at that time I did have forms of energetic protection, but they, how can I put it? It's almost like a type of telepathy. They projected the words into my voice box or into my mind. I literally said 2 or 3 sentences that were not of my making, but they came out of my mouth and they came through my voice. The lady that ran the tours was totally shocked, and I apologised profusely, and I said that wasn't me. I'm very, very ethical about the place that we were at, and I would never, ever share information that was inappropriate. Now, psychic sensing. If you're very psychically sensitive, very open, sometimes you may feel with your body that someone is standing, sitting, or even moving around in your energy field, or even in your physical body. Now this, I've had this as well, this can cause you mental and emotional discomfort. Quite often I'm sitting at my desk doing my work, and I'll know when there's dark entities present in a property because they will, how can I put it? It's almost like they're crawling around on the outside of my right knee. Like that's my spot where they go for some reason. I'm like, oh, I've got that creepy sensation. It's them letting me know that they know that I'm in the building or I'm on the property. And they're like, right, we're just letting you know. We know what you're up to. But I've been employed to do the job and I treat them very respectfully. It's just something that happens to me all the time. And also too, I have done a lot of paranormal investigation intentionally and sometimes unintentionally, like sleeping in places that are haunted. There's a place on the west coast here in Tasmania where I go quite often, and the accommodation is haunted. There's just lots of spirits there. It was a workplace. They're still going about their business. And if you're sharing a room with a nurse that used to work at this particular place, sometimes they'll be in bed with you and you will feel someone sleeping alongside you. You're not doing them any harm. They're not doing you any harm. You're just sharing the space. But for us living people, and for some people that I know that get a little bit creeped out by it, it can be a little bit scary when you've got spirits that get quite close to you. Other times, if you are someone that's very psychically open, you may get spirits following you because they want help. And you're feeling, maybe 100 eyes all on you, all at the same time. And you're like, I don't know what's going on. It's hard to explain unless you've actually experienced it. But you'll get to know what your signs and symptoms are, like me with the streaks of light inside my eyelids and that creepy feeling on the outside of my right knee. You just get to know your own personal bodily signs and symptoms. Now, again, if you're very psychically open, you may sense energetic changes in your chakras. Now, this is going to sound a bit odd, and for all those people out there that don't believe in chakras and meridian lines and all that woo-woo stuff, they are real and they are part of your energy body that's in your physical body. I have experienced that weird vibrationally tingle that you get, say when you've got your phone put on vibrate and it's in your back pocket. And maybe you've forgotten it's there and you're out somewhere and all of a sudden you feel that vibration and you're like, what the heck's that? Oh yeah, that's my phone. Well, I get that sometimes inside my body, mostly the base chakra. And generally when I'm sitting on a chair, I'll get that strange vibration. I'm like, what is going on? And when I check my base chakra, say I've done some energy work, and I've maybe created a tear in the chakra's energy, in that base chakra energy. The chakra's not functioning properly. It's not spinning. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing as an energy center within the body. It's disrupted. That's what I'm trying to say. Calling on all energy workers for this. This is the same thing. When you do your house clearing, your energy work, your Reiki and so forth, you're working with the chakras in the upper part of your body. Your brow, your crown, the chakras above your head. You can create tears or holes in those chakras through the work that you're doing. You can trap entities in your chakras. There can be portals in your chakras. There can be build-ups of emotions in your chakras. So you need to do the energy clearing work all the time. If you've got detrimental energy in your brow or your crown chakra, you can experience really bad headaches, almost verging on migraines. So you've really got to do the cleansing of yourself when you do energy work. Now, the other thing is, within our bodies, we have the chakras. We also have meridian lines. I've experienced energy surges in the meridian lines in my body. The meridian lines are a system of energy that runs through your joints, through the center of your body, the sides of your body, the back of your body. If you're interested, look up meridian lines on the internet and you'll find all the information that you need. But they're energy lines that run through your body, and I've experienced strange sort of tingly energy shooting out the ends of my fingers. It's the freakiest thing that you can ever experience. And you're like, where on earth is that coming from? Or, now this is quite painful, entities love to tap into your meridian lines because these beings are energy. They're going to go for the chakras. They're going to go for your meridian lines. I get electric shocks quite often in my liver meridian line and the gallbladder meridian line. That one runs down the outside of your legs. And I'll know, it's usually when I'm doing a house clearing job or a personal clearing job. Again, they're going, we know you're here and we know what you're doing and we don't want you doing it. They're just having a tantrum because they're getting a bit upset. Now, the chakra sensing and the meridian line sensing, that's not going to be for everyone. It's for people who are super, super energetically sensitive. They're self-aware of their energy. But I'm just putting it out there so that people get an idea. If they get these strange energies shooting out their fingers, and if it's not medical and it's not mental health, it's an energetic cause. So let's move on to, now these are a rather long list of mental and emotional signs and symptoms. Now, I've experienced some of these, but a lot of them have come from what I've observed with friends who I've done energy work for, and clients, and I'm sharing them all with these people's permission. So first up, we're going to be looking at delusions, panic, and paranoia. So some people experience rapid personality changes, including mood swings, suicidal thoughts, or urges to do self-harming to themselves and sometimes to hurt other people. Now, this can be mentally, emotionally, or physically. And remember, a lot of these are going to tie into people possibly having mental or emotional health needs. So please see your doctor first. So people can also have obsessive paranoid delusions or hallucinations that your mind or body is possessed or that your home is haunted. Now you may think that you see spirits or dark shadows everywhere. A lot of people hear knocking, they see items moving around by themselves, or you think that something is going to hurt you or your family. Now sometimes spirits do move items, but a lot of the time they don't. It takes a lot of energy to move items. I personally have never ever seen a dark entity throw something across a room. I know there's lots of videos out there. There's lots of footage of people capturing entities doing that. In 30 years plus of working with these beings, I have never seen them throw anything. Pinch you, punch you, poke, prod, push, give you electric shocks? Yes. You may feel that someone's staring at you. They're sort of over your shoulder. They're in your face. They're in your mind. So quite often people can feel like they are becoming extremely paranoid or feel like they're having a mental health breakdown. Again, see your doctor first. Now the next one, disorganized, confused thinking. And you just can't function normally to do daily routines and tasks. Entities, when they're in your space, as I call it, whether they're just around you, say in the home or at work or in another location, or they're actually in your energy field, chakras, meridian lines, and so forth, your physical body can't cope. Your brain will have trouble functioning. Your memory, you won't be able to remember how to do things. I've experienced this when I've been driving to locations, because occasionally I'll go and see people in person or go and visit their homes in person if it's a house clearing job. And I will get all sorts of brain fog. It's a distraction. It is to stop me from going to the client or going to the building. And I know that's what it is. I don't have confused thinking. I don't have any issues with my thought processes. But I know as soon as that comes up, it's always connected to work. There's something trying to distract me from doing a job. Now the next one. Sometimes, depending on people's level of sensitivity, they can experience blackouts or panic attacks for no rational or medical reason. I was with someone in a haunted location one day. This was a lady that I was on a tour with, and I wasn't a tour guide, I was just on a tour at this particular location. And this lady started having breathing problems. Like, we had to sit her down. And she was going into panic attack mode. Now, there was someone there treating her, someone that had first aid knowledge. They were there treating her. And I was observing her eye focus, like her eyes were all over the place. She was looking all over the... It was the freakiest thing. It was like she had switched. It was like a Jekyll and Hyde type situation. This lady was very energetically sensitive. She loved paranormal tours, loved the paranormal, had always wished to experience dark entity attachment. She actually said that to me once. And I'm like, please do not put that out there into the universe, because depending how your body responds to this, it may send you into a bit of a mind spin or worse. Now, that lady came right. She had medical treatment and she never ever did paranormal tours ever again. She stayed totally away from all paranormal everything because it was a trigger for her. And I'm really glad that she did that. She actually took notice and stepped away from it altogether. Now, some people can become completely mentally, emotionally, and physically withdrawn from everyday activities and interactions with work, with family, with friends. They become totally socially isolated because the entities know that this person is going to give them what they want when they become introverted. So they kind of trick them. They talk to them in their mind. They sort of feed them emotions that are going to keep them in a very low state. Now, this happened to a client of mine. He had a physical issue with some people out in the world, and it caused all sorts of trauma in his life. And because of the trauma and the activities that he was involved in at that stage, he attracted entities to himself. Now, this young man had moved away from the issue in the physical world, but he became so withdrawn that his mum rang me and went, "I don't know what to do with my son. Been to the doctor, been to the mental health professional. They've got him on antidepressants. Physically, he's fine, but he can't get off the couch. He just lies there in this zombie-like state, day after day, in his pajamas. He just can't seem to get up and get moving and to function." Now, this lady didn't particularly believe in energy work, but she'd done the medical, done the mental health, and her sister said, "Why don't you just contact Anna? She'll do some energy work for you, see what happens." The young man gave permission for me to do the work. He sent me the photo of his face. Sure enough, lots of demonic level entities. They were keeping him in a low mental and emotional state because he was creating all the emotions that these beings wanted. Sadness and despair and overwhelm, and he felt burdened and he didn't know what he was going to do with his life. "I can't cope." So he became withdrawn. Now, once all of the emotions were removed, I dealt with the, how can I put it, energy side of the trauma imprints, which came with the situation he was involved in. Once I removed all that, he was still on his medication for his mental health issue, still seeing his doctor. Once the energy work was done, oh my gosh, his mother messaged me and went, "I don't know what you've done to my son, but he's off the couch, he's dressed, he's showered, he's going out with his mates." She was dumbfounded. She was like, wow. And within the next week, he was back at work with his girlfriend. They decided that they wanted to move in together and life was just moving ahead. These beings kept him in a low state because that's what they could feed off. Remove that and the young man returned to normal. Now this is interesting. I call this the power of suggestion. I've had many clients contact me because they're doing harmful actions towards themselves usually, or they're thinking about doing harmful actions towards themselves. And they suddenly wake up and go, "What the heck am I doing?" Now, we talked about this back in episode 100, where Laura, she tells of her brother's rather frightening noose experience. So if you want to hear that, go back and have a listen to episode 100. But it was purely the power of suggestion. And it wasn't the power of suggestion from an entity, it was the power of suggestion from a rather narcissistic person. So our next section, some people, depending on your level of vulnerability to these entities, can experience a lot of emotional issues. Now, this can be internally and it can be externally, such as experiencing irrational emotional behaviours, such as senseless fighting between family members or friends that are triggered for just no reason at all. And the friends are like, "Why are you like this? What is the sudden change in you?" So again, it could be a mental or an emotional problem. It could be something going on at work, something that's triggered this person. But sometimes it isn't. So you've really got to look at all the factors. Some people experience uncontrollable emotional outbursts, like we mentioned earlier, that can go to either end of the scale, like really violent, angry behaviours, or they can be really sad and withdrawn and full of despair. I've talked with clients who've had sudden suicidal thoughts and tendencies, and the doctors just can't find the cause. And also too, children. Oh my gosh. Children are very susceptible to entity presence. Kids, before they go to school and their minds have kind of trained into routines and their psychic abilities, they're not squashed, but they're kind of put to the background. Kids are thinking about, school and friends and learning and home and family. Children are very psychically open up until about the age of 6 or 7. And then that school routine and that family routine sort of thing, it just kind of takes over. I've worked with a lot of parents who I've done house clearing jobs for that have been brought on by children having extreme behaviour changes. Now, there'll be people out there going, well, kids have tantrums, kids have this, kids have that. I 100% agree with you. But when it is sudden and when it is totally irrational and nothing has triggered it, it's got to be another cause. And yes, young children may have mental health issues, but I highly doubt it. I've worked with children from as young as 1-year-old, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and they've all come from good families. There's been no issues that have been shared with me or that I've picked up on when I've done clearings for the children. But what I have found is that there were entities in the homes that were triggering the kids. And because they're in the homes, quite often the entities can actually permeate people's energy fields and trigger the visions. I had one little boy who was 2 years old and he just started to talk. And he was trying to tell his dad about these dark shadows that he kept seeing. He was trying to say faces, faces, and he was crying, faces, faces. And his dad's like, I don't know, what is going on with this child? They checked the house, checked his room, looked in the windows, out the windows, under the bed, in the cupboards. There was nothing that could possibly suggest, how can I put it, like shadows on the walls or headlights coming past of a night time that may have scared him when he was in bed. There was no rational cause. When I tuned into this child, he had a couple of dark energy beings present with him. So the little man was seeing faces. When I removed the emotions that those beings were attached to and then removed the entities, the child stopped. There was no more irrational behaviours. There was no more screaming and going, faces, faces, faces. And the parents are like, I don't know what you've done, but it's disappeared. I always send people reports when I do personal clearings or property or house clearing work, so you know exactly what I found, what was removed. Now, sometimes entities will trigger disorders or mental health issues that you may have already had. And it can be something that's underlying sometimes that you don't know you've got. This is why you've got to see your doctors. I find, this is a couple of examples that I'm going to give. I have OCD. Now, it's not medically diagnosed, but I know I've got to check the car doors. I've got to check the handbrake. Got to check the house to make sure it's locked. Usually 3 or 5 times. We all know how it goes. When I'm about to start a house clearing job, these entities know that I have OCD issues. So in my head, I'll hear, the car door's not locked. The car door's not locked. You need to go and check the back door. You didn't put the handbrake on. And they'll drive me bonkers. And I used to go and check everything. Now I don't, because I know my car is locked. I know the handbrake is on. Because I have particular processes that I use to control the OCD. But these voices, the voices that I would hear, and they could be internally in my head, or sometimes they were externally. Now, something else that doesn't really fit into the OCD heading that I've just given, but the paranormal procrastination, as I used to call it, before I'm about to start a house clearing job. And I know it's the entities in the home who don't want me to start the job because they know they need to move out. But I'll sit down, I'll have my floor plans ready, I'll have my iPad and I'll have a photo of the house and I'm all ready to go. And it'll be, you need to go and hang the washing out. You haven't washed up for 2 days. Go and do the washing up. Oh, look at the floor. You need to vacuum. There'll be all these jobs that get put in my way, and sometimes I will do them just to shut the voices up. Well, I used to. Now I don't. I just go, no, the washing up can sit there. I don't care. It can sit there for another day. It's not a problem. They'll use where you are most vulnerable. This is why I'm giving these examples. So for me, the OCD, and they'll give me these procrastination jobs to stop me starting the work. That used to be a big problem These beings really do know how to trigger us, and we're all different. So this is why I'm giving a very long list of all these signs and symptoms. Okay, let's move on. We're actually getting pretty close to the end now, so just hang in there. Sudden onset of mild or heavy dizziness, extreme brain fog, and long periods of confusion and memory loss. Now again, if it can't be rationally explained as a medical cause, it might be energetic. They do this to me when I'm driving to people's homes. And don't laugh, but I will actually physically write down the directions on how to get to someone's house. And I'll have my iPad for my GPS, and I will also have tried to memorise it before I get to the location. Now, I went to a location one day, very short story here. I know where this house was. I'd driven past it 1,000 times when I lived on the other side of the river here in Hobart. I knew exactly where the suburb was. Do you think I could find my way there? No. I'm driving around and I said to her, look, I'm running a little bit late. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And she's like, no worries. We wondered where you were. It was so funny. When I finally got there, she was like, what's going on? I said, look, I had a lot of trouble getting here, which tells me that you've got entities in your home that don't want me here. And she said, well, that kind of makes sense, because when I was trying to talk to you on the phone, the line was all crackly and it actually cut out. So they'll use the digital stuff to try and remove the communication. So we just kind of laughed about it. Now this is our last section. We're going to look at obsessions with death, the occult, or black magic. Having a really extreme negative outlook on life and developing morbid obsessions about death can sometimes be paranormal beings because they're triggering you in a particular way. Like they know that you're frightened of death. Prime example, I have friends with children. Children, again, very psychically open. I have friends with kids and we know when they've got entities attached to them because these two little boys become totally obsessed with dying, with their parents dying, with worrying about death. You know, are you going to die, mummy? When are you going to die? I don't want you to die. Please don't die. And they get all upset and they just can't cope. And the parents are like, where did this come from? And we're talking at the ages of between 5 and 8. So really and truly, they shouldn't be thinking about death, not in the ways that these boys were stressing over death. These beings were using this as a way to trigger emotions in these kids. Now, in one of these cases, it was a very nasty person that was corded to one of these boys that was making him obsess over death. Now, it wasn't the child. He was being influenced. Remember the power of suggestion that I mentioned earlier? One of these little boys was being influenced by an outside source. Cut the cording, remove the influence. No more talking about death. They just go back to playing with their trucks and riding on their bikes and climbing trees and doing all that kid stuff. But it's being aware of what is going on around you. How people change suddenly. What has triggered the changes? If there's nothing that you can logically think of that's triggered the changes, you've done all the doctor thing. I know I keep saying that, but it's really, really important. Never assume you have an energetic attachment until you've ruled out mental health and seeing your doctor about your physical health. Now, I know someone, this is talking about the occult and black magic. I know someone back in the days when I used to do palm readings out at an event. We went to a medieval festival and I was there doing these palm readings. I may have shared this story in another episode. But this man came up and he wanted a palm reading and he was very, very, how can I put it? There was something very odd about him. And he was drawn to me and I was drawn to him and I knew why, because he had dark energy beings attached to him. And he showed me his arm where he'd been self-harming, like he'd been cutting himself and things were going on in his life. He didn't want to be doing this, but he didn't want to be rid of the entities. In a way, he had drawn these beings to himself because he had a very extensive collection of satanic books. He had satanic symbols all over his home. He had all the images all over his home. It was something that was innate in him, that he was connected to the occult, maybe in this lifetime, maybe in a past lifetime. But for these entities to be removed, he needed to change his lifestyle, and he didn't want that. So I couldn't help him. He's interested in Satan, interested in the satanic practices, doing the occult practices. He's going to have entities around him. It is just how it works. The vibe you put out is what you attract to yourself. Now, on that note, we have finished for today. I hope you made it all the way to the end. We have finished part 1 of Signs and Symptoms of Paranormal Presence. And next week, in episode 105, you're going to hear part 2 of the bodily signs and symptoms of paranormal presence. And when you put both together, you go, oh my gosh, how do we even survive living in this environment? But we do. We're going to unpack all the possible physical signs on the body and in the body. Changes in motor functioning and facial distortions. Now that's an interesting one. We're going to look at changes in sleep patterns and eating patterns. So please stay tuned for next week for another rather informative deep dive into physical paranormal interference and how our bodies can react. Oh, and don't forget, if you like the content of this podcast and you don't want to miss any future episodes, please subscribe. And you can share with your friends so we can get the message out there. We can spread the message about these paranormal pranksters and what they get up to in our homes. I would really appreciate it. So thank you for joining me today. And don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.